Hey everyone, I am Jennifer Purcell with Spark Flash Fiction, and I am here today to speak with Aisling Albright about her story in our latest issue called Support System. Now, Aisling writes compelling stories for fiction and creative nonfiction readers who like escaping into another world. From news articles in her journalism career to research articles in her science career, storytelling is always at the forefront of her work. She brings that passion to the creative genres precious to her since childhood. Okay, let's start off with my favorite question. What was the inspiration behind your story support system?
Excellent question. Well, part of it was the call out. That's why I chose that particular story to write at that time. That story is set in a world of that's partly based in reality. I live just outside of a national park in the mountains. And, well, I'm in the foothills, but the national park is in the mountains. And so I've kind of created this fictional world that's loosely like based on a romanticized version of the town I grew up in, which is the same town I live in now, but it's quite different. Um, so I've kind of created that world, and this is the first piece, this is the first story from that world that's being published.
Society. Well, tell me, because you write a lot of different things. Like from your bio, it talks about your news articles and your
Yeah,
work in your science career. And I know different types of writing can be super different. So tell
very.
me a little bit about the shift that I'm sure you have to make mentally when you sit down to write like a flash fiction piece versus some of your other writing.
Um, yeah, it's totally different. The part that makes it easier for me is I became fluent at each style of writing completely independently and almost in isolation. Early in my adulthood, I was a journalist and I did two different kinds of journalism. I did TV journalism, so I was writing what the people on TV say. Um, and that's a completely different style of reporting than, say, a long form newspaper
Mhm.
or magazine. It's still journalism. You still have to follow the same, well, at least then you still had to follow the same ethics. Um, but how you present that information is completely differently. So I learned that pretty well, and I could do that very fluently without much cognitive effort for a long time. And once you get good enough at something or it becomes natural enough for you, it's easy to go back to it. And then I went to grad school and I learned how to write for science. And I became very fluent at that because they make you write a lot. And while I was doing that, I was still working part-time in news. So I kept that up. And now that I'm a little bit more established and don't have to publish as much in science, it gives me this little extra time to play and have fun. And I'm still exploring the creative side. I've always done creative language, but not as consistently or as enthusiastically as I've been able to do lately.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's pivot for a second and talk
Okay.
specifically about romance a little bit. So this is obviously kind of a contemporary story, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious, is that like your favorite genre to read? Because I know I read a lot of historical and I find myself binging rom-coms. So like sometimes you find yourself reading something for enjoyment that's different than what you're actually writing.
Right. Um, oh, that's such a good question. My favorite things to read, I don't know I can narrow it down. I don't know that I can narrow it down. I grew up on simultaneously in like my adolescence reading Anne McCaffrey. So sci-fi fantasy, which always has a romance subplot of some kind. Um, and Louis L'Amour, which is, historical fiction. Um, in my young adulthood, I read a lot of fantasy, a lot of epic fantasy. And then I've followed Diana Gabaldon's work since Outlander came out. And so that is a combo of you make me choose. I do binge a lot of sports romance. I binge a lot of fantasy romantasy. Um, but yeah, when it comes to like commercial categories, I'll binge that all day long. I do a lot of audiobooks because life. It's much easier to listen to a book while you're folding laundry, than read while you're folding laundry. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I binge a lot. Huh?
Well, speaking of which, what are some specific sweet authors today that you mentioned that you binge? Because I know you said you like sports romance, but it seems like everyone now is writing sports romance because we're
Yeah.
all so voracious and we cannot get enough of them.
Oh, because you can read a book in a day. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel sorry for my fellow authors who are like they're painstakingly constructing this world and building these characters and for a year, more than a year, 2 years, and then I read it in 12 hours. I feel bad. But I enjoy it. I appreciate it. So I hope to, you know, become at least uh yeah, I hope to become at least one of those that, oh, I read this in 10 hours and then I didn't think about it again. That's fine with me, you know? Um, some of them stick with you for a long time, even if they're commercial and not like high literature. I find emotionally sometimes commercial romance is exactly what you need to get through your day.
I know sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I pick up an Emma St. Clair book and my mood immediately lifts. There's just something about her
Hmm.
stuff. So, there are a lot of tropes in romance. So, do you
Mm.
have any that you find yourself particularly gravitating toward?
Ooh, I like a slow burn. I like rivals or enemies to lovers.
Ooh,
Uh, th those are really fun for me. I really like those. I don't dislike any of them though, you know. But when I see that, I'm like, I could read that one.
I hear you. And I'm a mood reader, so I don't know if you're like this, but sometimes I'm just in the mood for an enemies to lovers, and then other times I'm in the mood for a friends to more, and it
Yeah,
depends on the day. So let's go back to talking writing for a second, because I'm curious, what is some of the best writing advice that anyone has ever given you?
just write. Just do it. You know, it's um yeah, I mean, you could talk about technique and do's and don'ts all day, but until you're writing consistently, and I still struggle with this, part of it's just schedule. I have an elementary schooler, and my husband owns a farm, so I help with that, and stuff like that. Um, but if I can write a paragraph, if I can write a paragraph a day, even on those in those busy, hard times, it helps. It helps to stay in it, and it helps feel good, and it gives you, like, if you force yourself to write, even when you're not inspired to, and you don't have any new ideas, and you're sick of your characters, and you're questioning your whole fictional world, even if you write, that's what gets you fluent at writing. And that's what we're all doing, right? That's what we want to do. So, yeah, sometimes you just have to force yourself. I do have Discord groups that I'm a member of, and I'll just set a sprint up for myself even if I'm not working on anything specific.
That's a really good idea. So I'm curious what your process looks like, because I know there's this huge conversation about the plotters and the pantsers and the ones in the middle. So I'm curious, where do you fall on that? Especially since some days you're just trying to just catch little snippets of time to get anything accomplished.
Yeah. Um, I do everything. There are some stories that like I have in the world in which support system is set. I have a three novel series outlined with bits and pieces among the outline written. Um, and then this story isn't even in that. It's just set in the same world. So in that sense, I haven't started working on that in earnest yet. It was just when the idea comes, I will write it down. And then sometimes, like I have a couple deadlines coming up at the end of the month, and oftentimes it'll start with imagery. I'll start with imagery. I see this cool image. There, I don't know if you've seen those social media things where like when you read things or when you imagine things, do you see it? How do you see it in your kind of mind's eye? And I'm one of those I'm almost full detail. So I'm like one step away from it's like a 3D movie in my head. Although I don't like in my head because it's not just my head, right? I can sense and feel and taste and smell in there too. So it's all my senses. Uh, so I'm pretty vivid with my imagination, and sometimes a scene will just come to me, and I will sit down and write that scene, and then so at that point I'm pantsing, right? And then when I get to a certain point where some sort of plot decisions have to be made, then I might step back and plot a little bit and then go back to pantsing the details. That's what I'm finding that works best for me.
So when you're doing that, do you just write and let the characters speak to you and kind of introduce themselves, or do you kind of figure out? Because you said that you've worked with imagery. So do you ever start with like you have this image of a character and like you just know so much from that one image that you can just jump into them like you've known them forever?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay.
Sometimes it's like that. The FMC of the second book of the same world that Support System is in came to me like that. Um, both main characters of the first book, I'm still struggling to find. and and like I said, I haven't started working on that solely or dedicated a lot of time to it, but still part of how I come to a story is that I'll think on it for a long time. Um, which is probably why the best advice I've ever gotten is just write because I can think forever, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I feel that. So now you mentioned this world, so I'm curious, will readers get a chance to see Dean and Sarah again in this world?
Maybe I would love for that to happen. I would love for that to happen.
That would be fun.
Um, whether or not it does, you know, I can't predict the future.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Where's the best place for readers to connect with you and keep up with your writing progress?
I post I've started to become more consistent with my Instagram.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's aisling.m.author.
Okay, awesome, awesome. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Ashley, for joining us today. It was so good to get to chat with you. And for all of those watching, have a wonderful week and never stop reading.